Today we're going to continue learning about Martin Luther King Jr. My name is Denise Steer. We're at the Rafael Hernandez School, and I teach English for all second graders and ESL. Today we did the unit on fairness and justice. I did it around Martin Luther King Jr. and how he fought to change the laws with protesting and through his words. This is a second grade classroom. Our ESL levels are between level 2 and level 4. So at the Hernandez School, ESL is embedded. What do you think would be a fair rule in our playground?
That if someone doesn't have friends and if they don't have anyone to play with, do you want to be my friend to them and play with them?
Oh, what a nice idea. Our playground for the Hernandez School just opened. Before it opened, we had to talk about how to be fair in the playground, what kind of rules we should have in the playground, how to share the equipment in the playground. So even though we're teaching about Dr. Martin Luther King now and his concepts of fairness and being just, we've been talking about the actual idea of fairness.
I could actually go to that group and say, can some of you guys and me play with that kid and that group play with those kids? And then if not, we can all go together and play.
I agree with Stella's idea.
The ESL MCUs really align well with the work we do in a dual language school. At all times, content and language are integrated across the grade, so students are engaged with meaningful content. And at a dual language school, our model is that students learn in both languages. Starting in second grade and up, the model is completely 50-50. So students have an English teacher and a Spanish teacher, and they'll switch weeks, 1 week with the English teacher, 1 week with the Spanish teacher. That being said, we know our students don't turn off their brain. They don't turn off their English resources when they're in the Spanish classroom. They don't turn off their Spanish resources when they're in the English classroom. So a big focus that we have is on this concept of bridging. At the end of the unit, teachers design a bridge lesson, and it's a very targeted lesson in which they match the partner language. So if it was a unit on fractions and comparing fractions in English, at the end of the unit, there'll be a bridge lesson in which the teacher guides the students in going over the key vocab, the key sentence structures, on the content tied to comparing fractions.
In the lesson I taught today, you could really see language is action through their discussion and through the very rich vocabulary they were using. It was very organic. The way they were thinking about things and making connections was really they're using their language and thinking about it and able to talk about it and make the connections between home and recess and school and Martin Luther King and what they're learning in a text and applying it to themselves. They're definitely using their language. You're going to turn and talk, but I want you to think about using this sentence. Martin Luther King Jr. wanted justice because. I try my best to build autonomy and critical thinking with having them do a lot of turn and talks and partner work and giving them a topic and be able to teach others.
We wanted everything to be fair.
So if you have more information on one topic, I have a lot of children become the teachers to teach vocabulary or the concept that we're going to be learning because they might know a little bit more about that. Our
school is very heavy on creating independent learners and students that are able to take risks and ask questions. So through the units that teachers create, they design opportunities for students to collaborate with each other, for students to come up with their own ideas. We have a focus on creativity in the school as well, coming up with original ideas, not just in art per se, but also creativity in literacy and science.
The lady got arrested because she wouldn't get up from her seat on the bus, and she got arrested, and the people were mad. So they did a protest of where they would not take the bus until they would be able to sit down.
At our school, we think of language learning in a continuum. So they're definitely still exposed to both languages, but it's embedded in the content that is being taught. So then my job became, as the school leader, is really researching what is dual language, how is that developed, and what does that look like even outside of our school and outside of our district. And bringing in folks that were doing this work across the United States.
Leah, what do you think?
Where does the school need to go 5 years from now? Where's the research going 5 years from now? Like, I'm constantly living in the present and thinking about what things I need to bring into the school as resources, but I'm also thinking about in the future. 5 years ago, our Spanish language teachers were very strict. The moment you walk into that classroom, you are speaking Spanish all the time because that's how I'm going to preserve your vocabulary development. So there was a reason for that madness of strictness. Here in this room, you're speaking this language. In that room, you're speaking that language, and never the two shall meet. What we realize with research, and that's why the adult learning and consistency in adult learning is so important, is that the research actually put that on its head and said, no, that's not really how a bilingual person works in the world. You use all of the things that you know to solve a problem or a task, and then the output is that language that you're developing in that moment.
White people could go everywhere and the black people needed to stay in their house because they couldn't go to the movies and other places. And when he grew up, he marched to get justice.
So for the collaboration tool in the ESL MCU, that is a very helpful tool that supports you in designing your unit. So across our school, we use the UBD process, the Understanding by Design process, to design lessons. And oftentimes our content teachers are really focused on identifying what are the content goals in this unit. The beauty of the collaboration tool is that it really zeroes in and focuses on language.
How does he want the world to change?
He wants the world to change better.
How?
And he wants the laws to be white people can play with black or brown people, and brown people can go in a pool with white people.
Once you're put in a position where you have to explain what you learned, then that's when the academic language and the language that you are asked to output, that's when that happens. And that transition into the two and letting the kids in on it is really super important. Like, this is what your brain is doing. This is what you're learning. Like, it's to the point where students in the 3rd grade understand that there's a meta-linguistic quadrant that they have to think about when they're developing language. They know that. They're in on it. And it's so incredible to be able to join that language learning journey with the kids, letting them in on all of those secrets.
Language really needs to be something alive and integrated with content. It's not something that's kind of set to the side on its own. It's fully integrated with context, and it needs to be meaningful. And I think especially at a dual language school, this is something we do all the time, but that the ESL MCUs really bring that to light. So schools that are really interested in moving the needle forward with English language learners and really further developing their English language skills, my advice would be to really take a look at these units, because these units are going to support that because they have the language tied very directly to content, and they have the language supports built in there, and language supports plus content is going to move ELL students' language acquisition forward and their academic success.